You're listening to Chat with the Experts, brought to you by Angie's List on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to Chat with the Experts, brought to you by Angie's List. We've had a lot of fun today talking with Greg Mrakich of Greg Mrakich Painting right here in Indianapolis, but our show is not over yet. It's time for our favorite segment, Writer's Block. Every week on this segment, we bring in one of the creators of Angie's List magazine and online content, and today our guest is one of our favorites, Paul Pogue. And over the years, Angie's List has done a lot of reporting on lead paint, digging deep into a very important topic that is oftentimes ignored. And leading the charge in that reporting has been Paul. His award-winning reporting on lead paint has been vital for readers looking for contractors that are licensed to handle the job, and it's helped clear the air about the dangers of lead paint. And Paul has become a bit of a regular on our segment here on Writer's Block, and we're happy to have him back with us today. Paul, welcome.
I'm glad to be here. Now I have to live up to that intro.
Yeah, well, I have no doubt that you will, and lead paint's a pretty serious topic, but before we get into that, one of the first things I remember about meeting you is your interest in comic books, and I was going to ask you about your favorite movie this summer, but I had a feeling that it would probably, I would just go ahead and bring up the new Avengers movie. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, quite a bit. And actually, when I'm speaking of movies, I have to preface this by saying I have not yet seen Mad Max Fury Road, and everyone I've talked to says I will love it, so as soon as it's on DVD, I'm on top of that.
Yeah.
I have two kids. I don't see much in the theaters.
Sure.
But we all saw Avengers Age of Ultron, and we liked it quite a bit.
Yeah.
I did not think it was quite as good as the first one, but very few films are. But
yeah.
I think it did a good job setting up where things are going to go with the Marvel movies. Because what I'm really fascinated by is sort of the second string stuff. So I love Guardians of the Galaxy, for example. And I think Captain Marvel and Black Panther in a couple of years are both going to be really, really good. And those are what I'm most looking forward to.
Well, just don't let Tom Lang know that you haven't seen Mad Max, because he came on the show a couple weeks ago and lectured me about my need to see it. So
I have been told by many friends that I have failed nerddom by not seeing it yet. But.
Well, to get into our topic at hand here, through the years at Angie's List, you've covered lead paint in depth several times. What sparked your initial interest in covering that subject?
Well, we were covering it back in 2007 because the RRP, the Renovation, Repair, and Painting Rule, was just really coming into effect in a big way at that time. So we wanted to focus on that and talk about it for Lead Safety Month in 2007. Mm-hmm. And I was the lead reporter on that. And sort of as a result, I picked up a lot of expertise on the topic. So whenever we followed up on it, which was very frequent over the years as things developed and changed, I was either involved in the project or more often than not, I was actually the lead reporter on that.
Right.
And I found I enjoyed it quite a bit because, for one thing, I have two small children, and so lead paint is of keen interest to me as well. I live in a very old home, so I'm very cautious about that. And also, I think it just goes back to the core mission of Angie's List, because this is a danger that is in tens of millions of homes that involves pretty much any contractor that's going to work in your home.
Yeah.
And I think it's our job to inform people of what they need to know about these sorts of things.
Right.
So it's right there at our core mission.
Well, you mentioned the Lead Safety Month, and October's coming up, which has generally been the month where we give the most emphasis to it. What are some of the main things that homeowners need to know when it comes to lead paint?
I think the biggest thing is to understand that lead paint, if you're in a pre-1978 home, you probably have lead paint. The further back you go, the more likely it becomes. If it's the 1950s or before, you definitely have lead paint. And there's sort of this pop culture image of, children chewing on windowsills and so forth.
Right.
And that's not where lead poisoning is coming from. The most common way it's coming from in the home is renovation and work that's been done. You're scraping paint, you're sanding paint, you're sending dust into the air, and you can contaminate things pretty easily. And if you have a child under the age of 7, you can do not insignificant long-term neurological damage. So the most important thing to know about lead paint is be aware of it and respect it and know what you have to do to be safe around it.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of people, people become aware of the lead paint issue. They know they shouldn't handle the job themselves, so they go to make a hire. But even when you do that, you have more things to think about because there are certain regulations that you need to know as you're making your hire. What is some of that information that people should be aware of?
Well, the biggest one on a nationwide level is, like I said, the EPA's Renovation, Repair, and Painting Rule, the RRP, as it's called, which I believe went into effect in 2007, which is one of the reasons we covered it back then, and is, obviously the law of the land right now. And it basically lays out a set of lead-safe practices that any contractor who's working in your home needs to be using if they're going to disturb either more than 6 feet of interior paint or 20 feet of exterior paint if you're in a pre-1978 home.
And I know that, as you go into this process and getting an idea of what some of these regulations are and who you need to hire that's going to do the job right, you get into a lot of terminology that you'll need to be familiar with. And one of those things I wanted to ask you about is what the difference was between something like lead safe work practice and lead paint abatement.
Yeah, and that's a good question because they sound very similar, but they're very different things. Lead safe work practice is what anyone working in your home disturbing paint needs to be following. If it doesn't matter if they're a handyman, if they're doing siding, if they're stripping paint, if they're doing anything that's going to disturb paint, those are the practices they need to be using. Yeah. Lead abatement is the task of either completely removing or encapsulating lead paint in your home to basically make it safe. And that's a very involved process, often a very large and expensive job. And it has an entirely separate licensing track on that. Mm-hmm. So someone who's got lead-safe work practices is not necessarily qualified to be a lead abatement specialist. So you really need to be, if you're going for lead abatement, you want to really closely look at the licensing, especially on a state and local level.
One of the things that's stuck out to me most about the reporting you've done on the subject is not only educating people about lead safety, but really digging into how well contractors actually understand EPA requirements when it comes to handling these jobs. And I know it's been a long process of getting people educated in that matter. What have you found? How well are contractors understanding this?
Well, I'm happy to say that a lot better than they used to be. We've done secret shopper programs over the last several times in the last 8 years that kind of look at what contractors know and what they're telling people. And the most recent time, I think 89% of the paint contractors we talked to were giving people solid, safe advice.
Okay.
That also meant 11% were not.
Right.
So you still need to be a little cautious on that front. And the most amazing and kind of disturbing thing is the number of contractors we have come across who know about the lead safe requirements and straight up say they don't care.
Right.
And they are happy to tell homeowners this straight up front. I'm not going to worry about it, and I will do your job cheaper because of this. And the most frustrating thing, according to contractors we've talked to who are properly trained and licensed in this field, is knowing that these people are doing it. They're doing it unsafely, and they're undercutting their prices because they haven't gone through the training. They're not using the methods and so forth.
Now, I think logic would say as people become more and more educated about lead safety, that sort of thinking will sort of become less and less because people aren't going to, even if it is cheaper, be willing to hire somebody who just says they don't care, they're not interested. I mean, do you feel like that's something, that's a direction that we're heading now?
It certainly seems to be going that way. I know people are becoming more aware of how dangerous lead is. I know the revival of Cosmos last year actually did a segment on the dangers of lead and how lead was basically everywhere at one point in the 20th century. And I was very gratified to see that. Yeah. That scared the heck out of my children who were watching it and seeing sort of these visions of lead in all places. And it's not that bad now, but there's people know that it's a danger and they need to be aware of it. I think the key now is making sure people know it's not, as I said earlier, it's not just kids chewing on windowsills. It is easily, released into your home, and those are things you need to worry about.
Yeah. So, there are people out there who do have, or they're going to consider cost in this whole conversation. Maybe they're doing a huge project and they know that lead's a problem. They may be thinking maybe there's a way to kind of go a cheaper route and kind of avoid dealing with that issue. I mean, is it actually worth the extra cost to, go about this safely on big projects for the home?
Oh, it absolutely is, and it's for a couple of different reasons, actually. The big one being, obviously, if you have small children in your house under the age of 7, they are going to be, they are easily going to be exposed to lead if you're not using the safe practices. And even if you don't have children in your house, that doesn't mean other children aren't coming in. Or that the next owners of your house might not have small children, and the lead dust can stay there for a long time if it's just being spread around haphazardly. And if you do lead poison your children, there's a lot of issues that you're gonna have to deal with later on, including, education will be more difficult. There's brain damage involved,
right?
Depending on the severity of the poisoning, and treatment is. Lead never goes away, basically. There are chelation treatments that make it that scale it back, but once it's in your body, it sort of stays there. If you get when you're very young, when you're 7, you develop what's called the blood-brain barrier that sort of blocks lead from getting into your brain and depositing itself there. But younger kids don't have that.
Yeah.
And on a purely pragmatic level, in more and more places, if you have work done in your home that was not certified as being done lead safe, you could be having issues selling your home. Right. You're going to get home buyers who know about these things, and they will ask you, when you added that new wing, to this 1962 home, did you do it lead safe? And if you can't say that you did, they may move on.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot to consider there, and Paul, I want to thank you not only for coming on the show today, but also for your reporting and the fact that it seems like this is a really important subject that even though the reporting's done, you're still researching, you're still learning, you're still educating people. I think that's really important. So thanks for coming on today to share that information. You can check out Paul's articles on lead paint by going to angieslist.com, and from there you can also get reviews and information on service providers in your area. If you join today, use the promo code WIBC40. You're going to get 40% off an annual membership. Another big thank you to Greg Mrakich for coming on the show today, and thank you for joining us. This is Chat with the Experts, and we'll catch you next time.
More than 2 million members use the power of Angie's List to find and hire great local service providers. Whether you need a plumber or a pet sitter, Angie's List has you covered. See ratings and reviews in hundreds of categories, shop popular offers, and request scheduling assistance directly online. Memberships start at just $9.99 per year. That's less than $1 a month. Join now and get 40% off with promo code WIBC40. Visit angieslist.com today.